संसद भवन के बजट सत्र का शुरुआती दिन संसद भवन से मैं मनीषा दुबे अपने साथी कमेंटेटर सुनील टंडन के साथ दूरदर्शन की ओर से आपका स्वागत करती हूँ। महामहिम राष्ट्रपति महोदय श्री के.आर. नारायणन जी का आगमन हो चुका है। ये राष्ट्रपति महोदय के अंगरक्षक आज सत्र की शुरुआत महामहिम राष्ट्रपति श्री के.आर. नारायणन द्वारा संसद के केंद्रीय कक्ष में दोनों सदनों की बैठक को संबोधित करने से होगी और राष्ट्रपति महोदय का ये अभिभाषण सरकार के कार्य और कार्यक्रमों का लेखा जोखा होगा। अभिभाषण के तुरंत बाद दोनों सदनों की बैठक शुरू होगी। महामहिम राष्ट्रपति श्री के.आर. नारायणन ये संसद भवन का गेट संख्या 5 है जिसे महामहिम राष्ट्रपति पधार रहे हैं।
The President is being received by the Vice President, Mr. Krishan Kant, who is also the Chairman of the Upper House of Parliament, the Rajya Sabha, the Prime Minister, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Mr. J.M.C. Balayogi. And now the President will be conducted in procession to the Central Hall of Parliament, where he will address a sitting of both Houses of Parliament, of members of both Houses of Parliament. The presidential address will be an exposition of the programs and policies of the government which are to be taken up in the course of this very important session, the budget session of Parliament. Tomorrow, this session will see the presentation by the Railway Minister of the Railway Budget, and on the last day of the month, on the 28th, the Finance Minister, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, will present the General Budget 2002. The President now being conducted on the red carpet, which we cannot at the moment see, through the courtyard of Parliament towards the Central Hall, being escorted in formal procession to open Parliament as the head of state.
सुनील, वैसे तो संसद के दूसरे सत्र भी होते हैं, लेकिन बजट सत्र से आम आदमी बिल्कुल सीधा जुड़ा होता है। उसकी आशाएं, उसकी निगाहें इस बजट पर बराबर जुड़ी होती हैं और भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था चूँकि विश्व की अर्थव्यवस्था में बहुत महत्वपूर्ण स्थान रखती है, इसलिए विश्व भर की निगाहें इसकी ओर होती हैं, न केवल आम आदमी की बल्कि हर वर्ग के आदमी की, और विश्व भर की निगाह इसकी ओर होती है।
Indeed, the Central Hall of Parliament we saw has been decorated. The fountains are playing in the courtyard over here. Chrysanthemums are in bloom. It's a very solemn procession, a solemn moment for India's democracy when the head of state comes to open a sitting of the representative of the people and of the states when they gather together here in perhaps the most significant session of Parliament in the year. The budget will be presented and will outline the policies of the government. This is very significant because the government has embarked upon the second generation economic reforms, and these are bound to be reflected in the budget, which is being eagerly awaited, anticipated by the common man, by industry, by all walks of life in India. As the President enters the Central Hall, a bugle will sound and all the members will rise to greet the President. This historic Central Hall, which is ringed all round with portraits of national leaders, and just above the presidential chair you can see the portrait of the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. This Central Hall, which has witnessed so many historic moments, including the ceremony which saw India awakened to freedom on the 15th of August 1947. And now the President enters the Central Hall of Parliament.
आज भी ये केंद्रीय कक्ष गवाह रहेगा बजट सत्र 2002 का। इस केंद्रीय कक्ष ने हर उतार चढ़ाव को देखा है इतिहास के, और सभी का ये गवाह रहा है। यहाँ पर जाने कितने संकल्प लिए गए हैं, कई बार भावपूर्ण श्रद्धांजलियाँ भी दी गई हैं, और यहाँ पर 15 अगस्त 1947 की मध्यरात्रि को नवजागरण के शब्द गूंजे थे। यहाँ पर करीब, जैसे कि सुनीत ने बताया कि कई महान व्यक्तियों के चित्र यहाँ पर लगे हुए हैं और ये करीब 22 चित्र हैं और यहाँ पर 650 लोगों के बैठने की सुविधा है। और चूंकि ये जो केंद्रीय कक्ष है ये बिल्कुल गोल है, वृत्त आकार है इसका, और वृत्त आकार जो है वो शक्ति का प्रकाश पुंज सूर्य के समान इसका प्रतीक है। महामहिम राष्ट्रपति जी को अभिवादन करते हुए संसद सदस्य।
It's particularly moving and heartening to see that Parliament is in session now again, completely in its formal traditional way, especially after the attack on Parliament that took place on this institution of our democracy just in December last year. Indian democracy is firmly in place, and the President now takes his place on the dais, and we will have the national anthem.
Honorable members, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this first session of the Parliament in 2002. My best wishes are with you for the successful completion of the heavy budgetary and legislative business ahead. As we begin this session, most of the results of the elections of the legislative assemblies of the 4 states, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Manipur and Uttaranchal have come in. I join you in congratulating the newly elected legislators. Our special felicitations go to the people of Uttaranchal who have elected their Vidhan Sabha for the first time after the formation of their state. I also welcome the newly elected members of the Lok Sabha consequent to the by-elections in some constituencies. This is the first session of the Parliament after the unprecedented terrorist attack on this temple of India's democracy on December 13 last year. It was an audacious challenge to our sovereignty. It was an assault on our national honor. It was a diabolical plot to carry out large-scale annihilation of the leaders of different political parties and people's representatives. Had the plot succeeded, it would have resulted in a catastrophe of unthinkable proportions. 9 brave souls sacrificed their lives to defend our Parliament and its members. We pay our grateful homage to these martyrs. What happened on December 13 was the nadir of a long list of reprehensible acts in a 20-year-long campaign of cross-border terrorism against India. It strengthened our resolve to deal decisively and conclusively with this challenge. The investigation into this conspiracy has clearly revealed the hand of terrorist organizations which have long operated from Pakistani soil with the support and the ruling establishment of that country. It is now also established that these terror outfits are closely aligned through ideology, inspiration, resources, and logistics to those who carried out the terrorist attacks against the United States on September 11, 2001. My government has made it absolutely clear that India is determined to end cross-border terrorism by all the means at our command. The brave Jawans and officers of our armed forces have been fully mobilized on our western borders and have maintained vigil despite difficult conditions. The necessary level of military strength and preparedness will be maintained to deter any aggression. On the parallel track, we have taken several diplomatic and political measures against Pakistan. We have also intensified our efforts to increase awareness among the governments and the peoples of the world on our just struggle against cross-border terrorism. We have emphasized that terrorism cannot be condemned somewhere and condoned elsewhere. The fight against terrorism has to be global and comprehensive. It should target not only the terrorists, but also those who sponsor, finance, support, and shelter them. Several members of parliament belonging to different political parties have traveled to various capitals of the world in recent weeks as a part of this exercise. There is a far greater appreciation and support abroad for India's position than ever before. An illustration of this is our success in persuading the United Arab Emirates to hand over a key accused in the recent terrorist attack in Kolkata. The entire nation is united in this decisive phase of the battle against terrorism. The complete consensus among political parties on this issue has once again demonstrated the maturity and greatness of our democracy. We keep hearing calls of resumption of dialogue with Pakistan. Terrorism and dialogue cannot go together. Recent history is witness to the fact that whereas India has always been ready for meaningful and fruitful talks with Pakistan, it is Pakistan that has ensured their failure with its acts of betrayal. India is prepared to resume the dialogue process with Pakistan provided Islamabad satisfies us that it has indeed taken effective steps to end the training, equipping, and financing of the terrorists and stop their infiltration into Jammu and Kashmir and other parts of India. We also demand that Islamabad hand over to us the 20 terrorists who have committed grave crimes in India and who continue to receive shelter in Pakistan. Positive action by Islamabad on these demands is the test of its sincerity to end its hostility against India and to pave the way for discussing all the outstanding issues, including that of Jammu and Kashmir, in a peaceful manner through bilateral dialogue. The government has clear strategy to deal with the internal situation in Jammu and Kashmir. First, to encounter the terrorists with a firm hand. In this, our security forces have already recorded demonstrable successes. We shall triumph in our mission to root out terrorism from Jammu and Kashmir in the same way that we did in Punjab in the last decade. Let no one have any doubts about it. The second objective in our strategy is to support faster economic development of all the three regions of the state, especially to create employment for the youth. Thirdly, we are prepared to talk with any group of people within the state who eschew the path of violence and who may have legitimate grievances. The people of Jammu and Kashmir will elect a new legislative assembly later this year through free and fair elections. No doubt we have to be vigilant against those who have no faith in democracy and who have shown their willingness to go to any length to subvert the manifestation of people's aspirations. I am confident that the forthcoming elections will help the return of peace and normalcy and accelerate the process of all-round development of Jammu and Kashmir. The government attaches the highest priority to the national security based on the recommendations of the group of ministers which comprehensively reviewed our national security systems. Far-reaching reforms are being carried out in the higher defense management, leading to closer coordination between the three services of the armed forces and integration of military and civilian defense structures. A separate defense procurement board has been set up to speed up defense purchases, make them more responsive to the needs of the armed forces, and to bring greater transparency in procurement. I congratulate our defense scientists and engineers for the successful test of the Agni Missile last month. Coupled with our other missiles which we have already tested, this will strengthen India's defense against any military adventures aimed at us. In our continuing quest for self-reliance, the manufacture of many types of defense equipment has been opened up to the private sector so that our national security can benefit from the impressive capabilities developed in recent decades by private Indian companies. They may now apply for licenses to set up defense industries and to establish collaborations with public sector defense undertakings. Such companies can also have foreign direct investment to up to 26% of the equity. This will impart a new vigor to the indigenous defense production and exports. Internal security has now become an integral part of the national security. The Union government, in close cooperation with state governments, has been taking necessary steps to strengthen internal security throughout the country. Today, terrorism and organized crime pose the most serious threat to internal security. They also endanger our external security and our national unity because of their well-known links to the network of anti-India forces in our neighborhood. The government therefore thought it necessary to put in place a federal law to deal effectively and expeditiously with terrorist offenses. In this exercise, it was also guided by similar laws already in place in some states or being considered in others. Accordingly, the Prevention of Terrorism Ordinance 2001 was promulgated on October 24, 2001. Since Parliament could not pass the bill to replace it, this ordinance had to be re-promulgated. While doing so, the government took care to seek suggestions from various political parties and made suitable modifications. Maintenance of communal harmony and adherence to the secular ideals of our Constitution are the bedrock of our national ethos. I wish to record with much satisfaction that, in keeping with the trend in recent years, there have been relatively fewer incidents of communal violence in 2001. However, the government will continue to maintain vigil against those who try to foment communal trouble. Towards this end, it has banned some fundamentalist organizations for their anti-national activities. I appeal to the people and to all political and non-political organizations to do everything they can to fortify peace and amity in our multi-religious society and thereby further strengthen the bonds of national unity. The Ayodhya dispute is one of the contentious issues before the nation. Its amicable and speedy resolution is crucial for communal harmony and national integration. The government is firmly of the view that this dispute can be resolved either through mutual agreement among all the parties concerned or through a verdict of the judiciary. To facilitate a resolution of this dispute, an Ayodhya cell has been recently created in the Cabinet Secretariat. The Government of India, being the statutory receiver, is duty-bound to maintain the status quo at the disputed site in Ayodhya. It will also ensure that all necessary measures will be taken to ensure the preservation of law and order. Peace, security and development in the Northeast continue to receive my government's focused attention. Militancy and extremism are the chief obstacles to tranquility, prosperity and welfare in the region. The mischievous hand of anti-India forces in the neighborhood is clearly at work behind many of these extremist groups. The government will deal firmly with those who have taken to the path of violence. However, it is ready to hold talks with all those who reject the culture of the gun. Simultaneously, it will continue to respond sensitively to the grievances of the people in this multi-ethnic region. For the first time, a special ministry for development of the northeastern region has been set up. The Northeastern Council has been strengthened. The tardy implementation of various developmental projects for which large sums have been set aside has long been the bane of Northeast. The new ministry has begun to reverse this state of affairs. I urge all the state governments in the region to fully cooperate in this endeavor. The peace process in Nagaland has been strengthened with the satisfactory progress of talks with the various militant groups. What is especially heartening in the last 1 year is that people of Nagaland have come out strongly in favor of peace, dialogue and development, often by staging spontaneous mass activities. Mizoram has already been reaping the benefits of peace. The government will fully support the efforts of all other northeastern states to emulate their example. A healthy economy is vital to secure our twin objectives of national security and all-round development. The slowdown in the global economy has also affected India. There was a decline in the rate of growth in 2001. However, the advanced estimates for the current year show a pickup in growth to 5.4%, restoring India to the group of 5 fastest growing large economies in the world. However, this rate of growth is neither sufficient nor satisfactory. We need to accelerate a host of reforms to enable our economy to reach a trajectory of growth of 8% and above. This alone can ensure success in our objective of doubling per capita income in the next 10 years and reducing the number of people living below the poverty line by half. Realizing the urgency of this task, the government has constituted a cabinet committee on economic reforms with the mandate of drawing up, facilitating and monitoring the implementation of the reform agenda. The 10th five-year plan begins this year. The approach paper to the plan aims at stepping up the growth rate of GDP to 8% a year over the plan period 2002-2007. It also proposes to establish specific monitorable targets covering economic, social, environmental dimensions of human development. The attainment of planned targets is contingent on our ability to significantly increase the investment rate in our economy, set up productivity of existing capital assets, undertake second-generation policy reforms to improve the efficiency of new investment, and to facilitate and encourage a deepening and broadening of reforms in all the states. I join all of you in extending hearty congratulations to our Kisans who have once again produced a bumper crop. The output of food grains is projected to touch a new high of 210 million tons in 2001-2002 from 196 million tons last year. With production of 81 million tons of milk during 2000-2001, India continues to be the world's largest producer of dairy products. We also have made impressive strides in many other areas of agricultural production. The government proposes to respond to the new situation with several measures to free Indian agriculture from the shackles of the past. The Essential Commodities Act will be modified. The restrictions on interstate movement of agricultural commodities will be removed to enable farmers to realize better prices. The sugar industry, which has already begun to benefit from delicensing, will also be fully decontrolled soon. For the first time, sugar mills have been allowed to supply ethanol to be mixed with petrol and diesel up to 5%. This will not only result in savings in our oil imports, but also add to the commercial viability of our sugar mills. Above all, the sugarcane farmer will be able to gain a higher price. The government is committed to strengthening the cooperative sector by enabling it to reap the full benefits of economic reforms. Timely and adequate credit is almost as important as timely and adequate water supply to the development of agriculture. The government will take steps to strengthen rural credit cooperatives which provide this critical input to Kisans at their doorsteps for the sake of agricultural sustainability and farmers' well-being. Food security of the poorest of the poor is the first priority of our agricultural policy. Accordingly, the allocation of food grains under targeted public distribution system for BPL families, which was increased from 10 kilos per family per month to 20 kilos per family per month from April 2000, has been further increased to 25 kilos per family per month from July 2001. The central issue price of food grains for all APL families has also been reduced to about 70% of the economic cost. In addition, more than 3 million tons of food grains have been allotted to 11 states affected by drought or other natural calamities free of cost since January 2001 for undertaking food for work programs. Wastage and losses in production, transportation and distribution continue to be a major bane of food economy in India. It is estimated that the harvest and post-harvest losses in agricultural commodities are over rupees 70 crore per year each year. The government proposes to formulate a comprehensive strategy to check these losses. India's cattle wealth is one of the neglected areas of our rural economy. Last year, the government set up a national commission on cattle to review the relevant laws relating to protection, preservation, development, well-being and movement of cattle and to ensure improved functioning of goshalas, gosadans and pinjra poles. The recommendations of this commission will be given serious consideration. Industrial growth at 2.2% in April-November 2001 is lower than 6% achieved in April-November 2000. This decline in industrial growth is attributable to various factors, including external slowdown, the business cycles, inherent adjustment lags of corporate restructuring, etc., and the consequent decline in both consumer and investment demand. Despite the slowdown in certain sectors of our economy, the fundamentals continue to be robust. Inflation has touched a new low, the lowest in the last 2 decades. Our foreign exchange reserves are at a record level. Foreign direct investment has risen despite hardening of international prices of petroleum products. During the course of last year, the country's balance of payments situation has remained comfortable. India's exports continue to show positive growth. Indeed, the rate of growth in the last fiscal year was the highest in the past decade. India successfully defended her national interests at the WTO Ministerial Conference in Doha last year. We coordinated with like-minded developing countries to highlight various implementation concerns arising from Uruguay round agreements. We also ensured that the subsequent round of trade negotiations would address the key concerns of the developing world. The various policy reforms unveiled by the government in the past few years to improve the economic environment and remove infrastructure bottlenecks have begun to show results. This is clearly seen in the crucial sector of telecom services. I am happy to inform the honorable members that India now adds 1,000 telephone lines every hour. The number of cellular phone subscribers has crossed 5.7 million from a mere 1.2 million in 1999. The number of fixed line connections has risen risen to more than 36 million from 21 million in 1999. Many more Indians today have access to telecom services, including in rural and remote areas. But unbelievably, they are also paying far less than before. The STD rates have fallen from up to 62%. Today, a farmer can make calls to many places in his district at local call rates. A similar achievement is also seen in bringing the benefits of information technology to the masses. Internet subscribers have grown to nearly 4 million from a modest base of 250,000 in 1999. The usage of the internet in Indian languages is also steadily increasing. Honorable members can now read on the same day several newspapers of their states on the internet when they are in Delhi to attend parliamentary business. We can therefore claim with legitimate pride that we have indeed reduced the digital divide to some extent, although a long way still needs to be traversed. Driving this process of ensuring faster, wider and cheaper digital connectivity across the nation is the new Ministry of Communications and Information Technology. It has created by merging the Ministries of Communication and Information Technology to respond to the imperative technological convergence, keeping in view the natural synergies between the two sectors. In spite of the downturn in the global economy, India has continued to maintain its dominant place in IT exports. From a negligible base 10 years ago, our software exports now contribute 14% of India's total exports. The IT software and services industry in India accounts for about 1.7% of India's GDP. We are well on our way to achieving our target of software exports of 50 billion by the year 2008. Other knowledge-based industries like biotechnology too are at a takeoff stage, and their contribution to the economy will rise in the coming years. India's entertainment industry has emerged as a leading edge sector in the knowledge economy and a huge promise for the future. Exports of Indian films have practically doubled every year for the last 3 years. The government is taking several supportive measures, supportive policy initiatives to increase the exposure as well as exports to our films and music to the world markets. This will also enable Indian content and service providers to become as sought after abroad as our IT professionals are. Our liberalized policies, both in television and FM radio, have already resulted in increased private investments and more choices for consumers. The government has approved a special package for development of broadcasting services in the Northeast. Then the government has initiated action to set up a world-class national press center. In recognition of the risks run by working journalists, a scheme for journalists' welfare has been notified. If providing universal digital connectivity is one of the government's priorities, the other is to speedily and significantly improve physical connectivity all across the country. 2 specific projects the government has launched to achieve this objective, and both among are the most ambitious infrastructure projects since independence, are the National Highway Development Project and the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. With the speedy progress of the National Highway Development Project, the government is promoting road development on a massive and unprecedented scale. 13,000 kilometers of national highways are being widened to 4 and 6 lanes. Of this, 1,800 kilometers have already been widened. The first phase of this project, namely the Golden Quadrilateral connecting the 4 metros, is progressing almost a year ahead of schedule. It is expected to be completed by the end of 2003. The National Highways Authority of India will spend rupees 10,000 crore during each of the next 2 years. The first phase alone will generate 19 crore man days of direct employment. In addition, it is going to create a demand for 10 million tons of cement, 1 million ton of steel, and a very large quantity of road-related domestically manufactured equipment. Further, the Union government is giving almost rupees 1,000 crore a year to states to improve highways and major district roads. The implementation of the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana has begun in right earnest. In its first phase, construction of all-weather roads to unconnected villages with a population of more than 1,000 will be completed by 2007. Under this fully centrally funded scheme, proposals amounting to nearly rupees 7,000 crore have already been sanctioned in all the states and union territories. The government proposes to further enhance allocation to this scheme through non-budgetary sources. A non-lapsable special railway safety fund of rupees 17,000 crore has been found for replacement of railway assets, especially in safety-related areas. With the 9th plan, which comes to an end this year, Indian Railways would achieve the target of electrification of 2,300 route kilometers. With this, 25.2% of the Indian Railways network will be electrified, hauling about 63% of freight and 49% of passenger traffic. Ministry of Shipping, newly created to give greater focus to this critical infrastructure, has been able to achieve significant increase in the capacity as well as the efficiency of our major ports. For the first time, ships do not have to wait for berthing. The government will soon announce the new policy initiatives to encourage Indian-owned shipping companies to compete globally. An Inland Water Transport Development Council has been set up. The amendment of the relevant act, which was passed last year, has helped to bring about organizational changes in the Inland Water Authority of India and authorized it to raise funds from the markets by issue of bonds or debentures. These steps will help our country realize the huge potential for this cost-effective and less polluting mode of bulk transport. The Indian power sector is at crossroads today. The country has a persistent peaking shortage of 13% and energy shortage of 7%, coupled with poor quality or supply, low voltage, and grid instability. The primary reason for this alarming situation in the power sector is the deteriorating financial health of the state electricity boards and state utilities. The yearly losses of the state electricity boards have increased from rupees 4,560 crore in 1992-93 to rupees 20,527 crore in 2001. This poor financial health of the state electricity boards is due to various factors, which include large-scale theft of electricity and unsustainable cross-subsidy in favor of domestic and agricultural consumers. To give further impetus to reforms in the electricity sector, the government has drafted a new electricity bill which was introduced in the Parliament last year. The bill would make reforms mandatory across all states, and it would be incumbent upon the states to set up their own state electricity regulatory commissions. At the same time, however, the bill is flexible and gives freedom to the state concerned to adopt its own model of reforms depending upon the ground realities. The dismantling of administered prices mechanism from April this year would result in gradual emergence of a competitive market with minimal intervention, thereby benefiting both the consumers of petroleum products and petroleum industry. The provision of subsidies through the government budget instead of the oil and pool account mechanism would be a more transparent mechanism. For the first time, 7 blocks of coal bed methane have recently been awarded to tap non-conventional sources of hydrocarbons. Contracts for these are expected to be signed soon. I am happy to announce that the waiting list of over 1.1 crore LPG connections was entirely liquidated in 2001. Over 1,500 LPG distributorships are proposed exclusively for rural areas to increase the reach of LPG for rural people. The textile sector plays a critical role in the Indian economy. The new textile policy has helped in the industry to prepare itself for the challenges of phasing out of the multi-fiber agreement in 2005. The Technology Upgradation Fund is helping in speedy modernization, which is critical for facing global competition from other textile producing countries. The new tourism policy is in the process of finalization. It has been discussed widely with state governments, the hotel industry, tourism and travel operators and other concerned organizations. It aims to develop integrated tourism circuits of international standards and leverage India's unique attractions by focusing on public-private partnerships to provide infrastructure and tourism services, and by promoting environmental sustainability and the development of heritage sites. This forward-looking policy will help Indian tourism become a major catalyst of economic growth, employment generation, and earner of foreign exchange. The public sector has played a laudable role in enabling our country to achieve national objective of self-reliance. However, the significantly changed economic environment that now prevails both in India and globally makes it imperative for both the public sector and the private sector to become competitive. Learning from our experience, especially over the last decade, it is evident that disinvestment in public sector enterprises is no longer a matter of choice but an imperative. The prolonged fiscal hemorrhage from the majority of these enterprises cannot be sustained any longer. The disinvestment policy and the transparent procedures adopted for disinvestment have now been widely accepted, and the shift in emphasis from disinvestment of minority shares to strategic sale has yielded excellent results. The government has taken 2 major initiatives to improve the safety net for the workers of PSUs. The first, enhanced VRS benefits in those PSUs where wage revision had not taken place in 1992 or 1997. The second, increased training of opportunities for self-employment for workers retiring under VRS. To ensure productive utilization of our resources, it is not desirable that these remain locked up in unviable, non-operating units. It would be much better for the units, its workers and creditors, and the company in general if there was a system of quick takeover of non-viable units so that capital continues to be productively employed. There is accordingly a need to urgently bring about a bankruptcy legislation which will allow quick payment of the dues of workers and exit of non-viable firms. The removal of quantitative restrictions has thrown up several challenges and opportunities for the small-scale sector, bringing global competition to its doorsteps. To overcome this challenge of increased competition, the sector has to raise its efficiency to attain global standards in product quality with internationally competitive prices. The government is already implementing many schemes to assist this sector. More will be formulated if necessary. Electoral reforms for strengthening our democratic system are long overdue. As part of this endeavor, greater transparency in accounts of political parties and incentives for payment by check are being put in place. The government has also decided to amend the system of elections to the Rajya Sabha by introducing open voting and by doing away with the requirement of residence in a particular state for contesting an election to the Rajya Sabha from that state. Fast-track courts are taking up sessions cases pending for 2 years or more and the cases of under trials in jails. At present, there are about 2 lakh under trials in jails on whose maintenance state government spend rupees 400 crores a year. Presently, Lok Adalats can settle disputes only on the basis of compromise or settlement between the parties. If the parties do not arrive at a settlement or compromise, the case is either returned to the court of law or the parties are advised to seek remedy in a court of law. To remove the above drawback, it has been decided to amend the Act to set up a permanent Lok Adalat. This will provide compulsory pre-litigation mechanism for conciliation and settlement of cases in certain public utilities. Honorable members, the year marks the first decade of democratic decentralization through empowerment of Panchayat Raj institutions. It was 10 years ago that this August Parliament passed the historic 73rd and 74th Amendments to the Constitution. The functioning of the grassroots institutions of democracy has improved in many parts of the country. Of great significance is the increased participation made possible through affirmative action of women representatives and representatives of other disadvantaged sections of our country, of our society. However, we must in all honesty admit that the spirit of this revolutionary initiative has not yet been fully translated into genuine devolution of adequate administrative and financial powers to Panchayat Raj institutions. I would like the state governments to self-critically review the gap between the intent of the Constitution and the reality on the ground. On its part, the Union government has decided to train all elected Panchayats functionaries at all 3 levels within 3 years. Census 2001 recorded that the population of India was 1,027 million. The decline in both mortality and fertility during the 90s has been lower than the projections and the goal set for the 9th plan. However, the decadal growth during 1991-2001 was 21.3%, declining from 23.9% for 1980-91, the sharpest decline since independence. More than half of the increase in population over the next 15 years is anticipated in 8 states, which are lagging behind in critical socio-demographic indices. The government has set up an empowered action group to address the needs and problems of these states exclusively. India took a major step last year to achieve universalization of elementary education. I commend all of you for passing the historic Constitution 93rd Amendment Bill 2001 to make education for all children in the age group of 6 to 14 years free and compulsory. It is a birthright of every Indian child to have access not only to education but to good education. Accordingly, to emphasize and inculcate the culture of quality in the entire education sector, we have decided to observe the year 2002 as the year of quality education. The census 2001 has brought home yet again the incidence of female feticide, infanticide, and neonatal mortality, all adverse to the girl child in several pockets of the country. A massive campaign has been launched to tackle the situation both by social awareness and stringent implementation of the law. The Prenatal Diagnostics Act is being amended to ensure complete stoppage of sex determination tests all over the country. India has become a polio-free except in a few very small pockets. Eradication of polio from these areas is expected by the end of this year. Learning from the success of anti-polio drive, the government has intensified mass campaigns against other dreaded diseases like tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS. The anti-tobacco campaign will be further strengthened. Poor sanitation affects health and housing of a majority of our people. It has also made many parts of our cities and villages look dirty and ugly. The Valmiki Ambedkar Awas Yojana was launched last year to ameliorate the housing problems of slum dwellers. As a subcomponent of this new scheme, the government will soon launch a nationwide program called Nirmal Bharat Abhiyan to build community toilet complexes in large numbers. These will be maintained by community-based organizations or slum dwellers themselves. The Indian Board of Wildlife, under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister, has recently adopted a landmark wildlife action plan. Conservation of wildlife shall be declared a national priority. A forest commission will soon be set up. State governments will be assisted to strengthen their staff and other requirements for better upkeep of parks and zoos and to prevent poaching and illicit trade in animal products. To provide social security benefits to agricultural workers, the government has launched Krishi Shramik Samajik Suraksha Yojana. The scheme, which is being implemented by the Life Insurance Corporation in 50 selected districts of the country, envisages to cover 1 million agricultural workers over a span of 3 years. The Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has stepped up implementation of various programs for welfare of scheduled castes, other backward classes and minorities. More credit has been made available to the microfinancing program for funding self-help groups. Under the National Scheme of Liberation and Rehabilitation of Scavengers and their dependents, sanitary marts have started functioning in many states. The Ministry of Tribal Affairs has now decided to expand and modify the grain bank scheme to cover all the 114,000 tribal villages in the country. The government will provide a one-time grant of 2 quintal food grains per family along with storage and other costs. The successful development of flight of the geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle GSLV from Sriharikota in April last year is a significant milestone in the Indian space program. India is the 6th nation in the world to achieve such capability. The GSLV will be operational after another 2 or 3 test flights. The INSAT system for telecommunications, television broadcasting and meteorology received a further boost with successful launch of INSAT 3C last month. India's foreign policy has always served as a reliable protector and an effective promoter of our vital national interests in security or in development. In the wake of the happenings of September 11th and December 13th, enormous demands were made on our foreign policy establishment last year to put across India's point of view in the capitals of the world. In addition, a hectic schedule of incoming visits of important world leaders enabled the government to share its perspectives on regional and global issues. Afghanistan is a valued friend in our neighborhood, a friend with whom we have had cultural, economic and spiritual exchanges dating back to antiquity. We agonize with the rest of the civilized world the destruction of the Taliban by the Taliban or the Bamiyan Buddhas. India rejoices at the liberation of Afghanistan from the clutches of fanatical and regressive regime that allowed its soil to become a breeding ground for jihadi terrorism around the world. The establishment of the Afghan interim administration on December 22, 2001 in Kabul was an important step in restoration of peace and stability in Afghanistan as well as in the region. We fully appreciate the enormous task that faces that war-ravaged nation in addressing its humanitarian and reconstruction needs and are committed to assist the fraternal people of Afghanistan in meeting them. We will soon have the pleasure of receiving Chairman Hamid Karzai of Afghanistan Interim Administration on a state visit to India. India and Nepal continue to share traditionally close and friendly relations. Nepal has faced unprecedented challenges in recent months, first with the unfortunate tragedy in the royal family and then with the continuing senseless killings by the Maoist insurgents. We have extended our hand of solidarity and support to the government and people of Nepal in their efforts to restore normalcy and maintain peace and security. We continue to enjoy a close relationship of friendship, mutual trust and beneficial cooperation with Bhutan. India remains committed to strengthening friendly ties with Bangladesh in all spheres. To this end, there is a new visa regime in place to make travel between the two countries easier and for enhancing people-to-people contacts. Our economic interaction with Bangladesh has diversified in many areas that include services, joint ventures in infrastructure development, transport services, and sharing of river waters. We have also noted with satisfaction the recent efforts of Sri Lanka towards ending ethnic violence and achieving lasting peace. We remain committed to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Sri Lanka and support the measures to further the peace process. It is a matter of deep satisfaction that there has been a revival of the SAARC process, beginning with the meeting of foreign secretaries in August 2001 in Colombo and culminating in the 11th summit of heads of state and government in Kathmandu early January. Steps are being taken to deepen and broaden regional economic cooperation. India is committed to progressive tariff liberalization towards the goal of South Asia Free Trade Area. India continues to pursue a policy of constructive and positive engagement with Myanmar. Our Consulate General in Mandalay and the Myanmar Consulate General in Kolkata will both be reopened shortly. The long-standing friendship and strategic partnership between India and Russia were further reinforced by regular political consultations on regional and international issues of mutual concern. These are being further intensified through economic cooperation and diversified defense cooperation. A number of important bilateral documents were signed during the Prime Minister's visit to Russia in November last year. Our bilateral relations with China continue to gain momentum and diversity. The recent visit of Premier Xu Rongji of China underlined this process. The effort to build trust and understanding continues. With Japan, our global partnership is being concretized around the two main pillars of our economic cooperation and our strategic convergences. The joint declaration issued during Prime Minister's visit to Japan in December 2001 sets out the common perspective of both our countries on important bilateral issues and global challenges. Our relations with Southeast Asian countries and with ASEAN have been on the upswing in recent years. There is a greater realization of the potential for partnership. The first India-ASEAN summit later this year in Cambodia will be a significant event for the region. India is concerned at the continued escalation of violence in the Middle East, which has derailed the peace process. The international community's realization is today reinforced that no durable peace can be achieved in the region without a viable state of Palestine alongside Israel, each within secure and recognized borders. We continue to be ready to extend all possible assistance to the fraternal Palestinian people. The political dialogue with Europe has carried forward at the highest level during the visits of German Chancellor Schröder, UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, and Norwegian Prime Minister Jens Stoltenberg to India. The India-EU summit held in New Delhi in December 2001 was another milestone in our relationship with the European Union. The institutionalization of summit-level interaction recognizes the coalition of interests between India and EU to meet the challenges of the 21st century. We remain committed to intensification of our relations of friendship and cooperation with the countries of Eastern and Central Europe. Relations with the United States continue to grow stronger. The Prime Minister and subsequently other senior cabinet ministers paid successful visits to that country recently. The government will maintain its policy of broad-based engagement with the United States in the pursuit of mutually beneficial bilateral relations and many common goals in Asia and beyond. The terrorist attacks of September 11 and December 13 have brought the two countries closer in defense of their shared values of democracy, freedom, and pluralism against forces of terror. We will continue to work to further strengthen mutual understanding on security issues and to advance international peace and stability. Africa continues to occupy a special place in our diplomatic interactions. Our relationship with this important continent has strong political foundations based on our principal support for decolonization and national liberation movements and our strong opposition to apartheid. The challenge today is to give even greater economic content to these historic relationships, taking into account new and emerging opportunities. A significant feature of our interaction with Africa has been sustained high level of bilateral exchanges. I visited Mauritius in March last year as a chief guest on their National Day. Other bilateral exchanges have been taking place and are being planned. With the countries of Central and South America, our political and economic relations have been steadily expanding. The High-Level Committee on the Indian Diaspora, constituted in September 2000, presented its report to the Prime Minister on January 8, 2002. The government has accepted the recommendation of the committee that 9 January every year may be celebrated as Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. It was on this day that Mahatma Gandhi himself, a Pravasi Bharatiya in South Africa for almost 2 decades, returned to India in 1915. Up to 10 Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Awards will be conferred on prominent non-resident Indians on persons of Indian origin on Pravasi Bharatiya Divas from next year. The government intends to restructure the persons of Indian origin card scheme and significantly reduce the fees for the card. Honorable members, the budget session begins today. Apart from the financial agenda relating to the railway and central budgets, there is also heavy legislative business awaiting completion in this session. There are 36 bills pending in the Lok Sabha and 40 in the Rajya Sabha. 4 ordinances need to be replaced with bills. We know that the work of Parliament, especially in the budget session, will be keenly awaited by our people whose hopes and aspirations all of you represent. They especially want to see that the invaluable time of India's Parliament is best used for the completing all scheduled business. I wish you success in your endeavors. Jai Hind.